The galaxy was vast, filled with powerful empires, ancient civilizations, and alliances that stretched across stars. Among them, the Galactic Coalition ruled with pride and control, a union of over 70 alien species that had united to maintain peace, law, and order across known space. They believed in diplomacy, balance, and progress, but not equality. There was one planet, small and often ignored, that the Coalition never accepted into its circle: Earth. The humans were seen as too emotional, too violent in history, too unpredictable to be trusted with the galaxy's secrets. They were left alone, watched from afar, their technology underestimated, their potential overlooked. But Earth had been quietly growing, learning, and expanding into deep space without needing the Coalition. It was during one of these peaceful missions, a colony ship named Aurora's Light, carrying scientists, engineers, and families to a new world, that disaster struck. A Coalition scout ship, patrolling a disputed sector, mistook the unarmed human vessel for a pirate ship. Acting quickly and without confirmation, the alien captain ordered a warning shot, but due to faulty targeting, it hit the colony ship's main reactor. The explosion was immediate. The ship tore apart in seconds, and all 500 human lives were lost. The Coalition claimed it was a tragic accident, a simple misfire, nothing more. The captain filed a short report, was quietly reassigned, and the council believed the humans would either never know the truth or would accept it and move on. But they didn't understand what kind of species they were dealing with. Earth received the automated distress signal just before the ship was destroyed. There were voices in it, frightened, confused, then silent. The signal was broadcast across every human colony, and then to Earth's central defense network. The footage of frightened children in zero gravity, of crew members screaming for help, of silence swallowing hope, was played again and again. And in those images, something changed inside humanity. The message wasn't forgotten. It was carved into memory. Earth didn't send a protest. They didn't ask questions. They didn't demand a trial or an investigation. Instead, Earth's leaders gathered in silence, and something cold passed between them, not rage, not panic, but decision. Plans were pulled from old military files, shipyards were activated in secret, and a project long buried in Earth's dark history was brought back. A warship, like none seen before, was built in orbit under heavy encryption. It was not made for diplomacy. It was made for one purpose only: to deliver a clear message to the stars. And as the Coalition continued its meetings and missions as usual, unaware, the countdown to something far greater had already begun. Humanity was no longer the forgotten species. Now they were watching, waiting. And very soon, they would respond not with words, but with something the galaxy would never forget. The stars were quiet, just as they had always been, and the Galactic Coalition believed everything had returned to normal. Reports of the destroyed human colony ship had faded into silence, filed away as an unfortunate accident in the deep reaches of space. Coalition members moved on with their politics and power games, never considering that humanity might answer in a way the galaxy had never witnessed before. Then, on a quiet morning cycle in Sector 12, the heart of Coalition-controlled territory, everything changed. Without any warning or prior signal, a ship appeared. It didn't match any known design. It didn't carry a Coalition signature or respond to hails. It came alone, drifting silently past border outposts with a calm confidence that unsettled even the most experienced commanders. The first image captured by long-range scans showed something terrifying. This was not just a ship. It was a fortress. Thick armor plating covered its body like an ancient beast, bristling with weapon arrays that shimmered with energy, all hidden behind angled, brutal steel. Its surface bore no logos, no call sign, just a painted phrase in bold white, FORTHELOST. Coalition forces scrambled to intercept, launching a fleet of 9 ships to meet this intruder. But when they surrounded it, the warship didn't flinch. Instead, it moved with quiet precision, locking onto every enemy ship in an instant. Before the Coalition officers could issue commands, the human ship opened fire with surgical efficiency. High-energy blasts sliced through hulls like paper. Explosions rippled in space. Within 40 seconds, every coalition vessel in the area had been disabled, their engines offline, weapons destroyed, but crews still alive spared, but shaken. Then the warship sent a message, one that was transmitted, echoing through every command center and council chamber in the galaxy. Worse still, intelligence officers soon discovered that the warship had left no trace of its origin. No hyperspace trail, no navigational data, no vulnerability. It had vanished after the attack, like a shadow fading into the void. The Coalition realized something terrifying. The humans were not acting out of rage. They were not sending fleets or armies. They were sending a message, delivered by a single ship that could strike anywhere, anytime, and disappear just as easily. The message was not just for the commanders and diplomats, it was for the entire galaxy. A reminder that Earth may have been quiet, but it was never weak. And now, it was angry. Civilians across alien worlds began asking questions about humans they had once mocked or ignored. Military academies began reviewing old human war records, and what they found was chilling. Earth had fought countless wars, not for conquest, but for survival. They had learned to fight not because they loved war, but because their history had demanded it. And now, that same instinct had awakened again. The Coalition, for the first time in centuries, felt vulnerable. Their greatest fear was not just the power of the human ship, it was the silence that followed it. No new threats. No official war declarations. Just one perfect, terrifying strike, followed by complete silence. Earth had spoken once, and the galaxy knew they would not need to speak twice. The galaxy was no longer calm. Fear moved faster than light, carried not by ships but by whispers, warnings, and wide, disbelieving eyes. Across every spaceport, council chamber, and military station, the name Earth was suddenly no longer a forgotten planet at the edge of space. It became a threat spoken in hushed tones. Ordinary people on distant alien worlds began locking their doors at night, even though Earth was hundreds of light years away. Merchants paused before trading with human colonies, unsure if a single insult might spark another silent strike. Even the bravest warriors in the Coalition began to question if they were truly safe. What terrified everyone the most was not the damage done by the mysterious human warship, it was the unknown. No one knew how many more ships like it existed. Was it just one? Were there fleets hidden in the dark corners of space? Why had the humans remained so quiet for so long, only to respond with perfect precision when pushed too far? Coalition leaders were drowning in panic. Emergency security protocols were raised to maximum alert, space patrols tripled, and scientists were ordered to analyze every human signal, message, and military file ever recorded. Yet, no one found anything useful. Earth had buried its true strength behind a mask of silence and patience, and now that mask had been removed, the Coalition's attempt to contact Earth diplomatically failed. Every transmission was ignored. No messages were returned. The silence from Earth was louder than war drums. It told the galaxy that humans were no longer interested in talks, they had already made their decision. On neutral worlds, where alien species once laughed at human culture and viewed them as strange creatures of emotion and chaos, fear began spreading through the streets. Human embassies were surrounded by guards not to protect the humans, but to prevent angry mobs from trying to punish them for what they believed was coming. But the humans inside those embassies didn't flee or hide. They remained calm, collected, and silent. It was as if they were waiting for something. In one of the Coalition's central command bases, an admiral who once publicly called humans primitive savages was now reviewing defense plans with shaking hands. He had seen the video, the one the human warship had broadcast to the galaxy. He had watched that single ship disable 9 Coalition vessels in less than a minute, sparing lives, but crushing pride. That admiral, now silent and pale, knew that humans could have destroyed those ships completely, but didn't. And that choice meant something even more terrifying. It meant humans had control. They weren't lashing out blindly, they were planning something bigger, and no one knew what it was. Meanwhile, inside secret Earth command bunkers hidden beneath the surface of the moon, something massive was happening. Engineers and military minds were working around the clock, not to build more weapons, but to perfect the one message that had already begun shaking the stars. They didn't want total war, but they weren't afraid of it either. For years, Earth had prepared for the worst-case scenario. They had studied every known species, mapped every weakness, calculated every possible outcome. And now, as the galaxy burned in fear, Earth watched silently. On the edges of coalition territory, pirate groups and mercenaries who once hunted human ships began abandoning their missions. Some turned to smuggling, others disappeared entirely. Even they understood that poking the humans again might be the last mistake they ever made. In one corner of the galaxy, a coalition patrol ship found an abandoned space station, once used for illegal human experiments. Inside, they found a single message painted across the walls in human letters. "You didn't break us. You built us." The soldiers who entered that station never spoke about what they saw there, but they returned changed, quieter, more alert, and deeply shaken. The coalition began falling apart from the inside. Trust among member species crumbled as blame was passed around. Who ordered the attack on the human colony ship? Who ignored the warnings? Who underestimated a species that had survived on a planet full of war, disaster, and chaos for thousands of years? In the end, they realized it didn't matter. What mattered now was the fear that had settled into the hearts of every leader, soldier, and citizen. A fear that didn't come from numbers or fleets or firepower, but from the cold understanding that they had made a mistake they could never undo. And the humans? They were not celebrating. They were not broadcasting threats or demanding apologies. They were just watching. Like hunters in the dark, waiting for the next wrong move, ready to strike again, not to destroy, but to remind the galaxy that some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. And in that quiet, heavy silence, the galaxy finally understood. Earth had not started this war, but they would end it, on their own terms. As the galaxy waited in silence, desperate for answers, a forgotten archive was discovered in the ruins of an old research station near the galactic rim that had once studied early human behavior before Earth was granted full communication rights. The station had been shut down for decades after being deemed useless, but now it was seen as the key to understanding the storm they had awakened. A coalition historian named Varen, curious and frightened like the rest, accessed the data personally. The files were ancient, barely readable, but what he found inside changed everything. They weren't just records, they were warnings. The documents spoke of a species that evolved under pressure, pain, and endless trials. A species born not in comfort, but in chaos. Where other species advanced through cooperation and peace, humans advanced through struggle. Every age of their history was filled with wars, disasters, near extinction, and yet they always survived. They didn't just adapt to suffering, they mastered it. What shocked Varan the most was the psychological analysis. Unlike most species who broke under fear, humans grew stronger. Where trauma caused mental collapse in others, humans developed resilience. Their minds had learned to rebuild themselves after pain, even using it as a weapon. And when faced with extinction, humans didn't wait for mercy, they fought with everything, even if everything meant just their bare hands and unbreakable will. The deeper he read, the more horrifying the truth became. Humans had emotions more intense than any other species, but they weren't weaknesses, they were fuel. Rage made them unstoppable. Love made them fearless. Loss made them dangerous. And when humans united behind a cause, especially after suffering injustice, they became something else entirely. Not just survivors. Not just warriors. Something far beyond. Varen immediately sent the files to the Coalition High Command, demanding a galaxy-wide emergency meeting. Within hours, leaders from dozens of worlds gathered in a digital chamber, watching as the footage played. Video logs from ancient Earth wars, rescue missions during collapsing civilizations, humans carrying wounded enemies from battlefields, mothers shielding children during asteroid strikes, soldiers laughing in the rain of fire, choosing to die standing rather than surrender. These were not the acts of monsters, but of something terrifyingly strong. One alien general, after watching the final video, a human astronaut singing calmly as his damaged ship drifted towards certain death, whispered, We didn't attack a weak race, we provoked legends in disguise. The coalition realized their biggest mistake was not just underestimating human technology, it was misunderstanding human nature. For too long, they had believed strength came from power and weapons. But humans had something else. A kind of strength that couldn't be measured by scanners or simulations. The strength of those who had been broken and rebuilt 1,000 times. The strength of a species that had learned to fear nothing, not pain, not death, not even the end of their world. The revelation spread quickly. Species that had once laughed at humans now stood in silence. Some cried. Some prepared for what they believed was coming next, total destruction. But Earth didn't attack. There were no fleets, no invasions, no ultimatums. Just the silence. And in that silence, the truth was louder than ever. Humans didn't need to shout. They didn't need to threaten. Because now, the galaxy finally knew. They had poked something ancient, powerful, and deeply human. And what they saw staring back at them was not a creature of hate but of purpose. Humans were not killers by nature, but if you gave them a reason, they became something else. They became history's reckoning. The coalition sat frozen, trying to decide what to do next. But deep down, every leader already knew. The humans had revealed themselves not through words, but through restraint, through silence, through the one warship that disabled 9 without killing a single soul. They had shown what they were capable of and then vanished. And that final act, walking away, was the greatest warning of all. Because it meant they were still watching, still waiting. And if the galaxy dared to make another mistake, the humans wouldn't hold back again. They didn't need to conquer, they only needed to be provoked. And if that happened, the galaxy would not survive the second lesson. Now they understood. Humans were not just another species. They were the final answer to the question no one had dared to ask. What happens when you corner something that has fought every battle, survived every trial, and risen from every fall? The answer echoed in every chamber, in every mind, across every world. You don't. The galaxy waited in breathless silence, every species haunted by what had been revealed about humans, their past, their strength, and the terrible truth of what they could become if pushed too far. No one knew what Earth would do next. The warship had disappeared after the skirmish, and no messages were sent. The coalition remained frozen in fear, their fleets standing by, but no one daring to act first. Then, just as panic was starting to replace the silence, a signal was received, direct, clear, and unmistakably human. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. A location was shared deep in neutral space, far from any star system, with a simple message: send your leaders. Let's talk. Suspicion ran wild across the galaxy. Was this a trap? A final move before the humans crushed them completely? But refusing the offer felt even more dangerous. After hours of argument and fear, the decision was made: every major species would send one representative, and each would carry no weapons. They arrived at the coordinates, where they found not a warship, but a single human vessel floating calmly in space. No weapons were raised, no defense systems active. Inside, waiting alone at a large table, was a single human ambassador. His voice was calm, almost soft, but there was a weight in his tone that silenced even the boldest of leaders. He didn't waste time. He didn't talk about the past. He simply said, "You attacked our people. You misjudged our silence. And now, you know what we are. So here is our offer: peace. A real peace. One based not on fear, but understanding. You leave us alone. We leave you alone. You never raise weapons against our kind again, and we will not remind you what happens if you do." The words settled over the room like smoke. Some leaders looked at each other in confusion, others in disbelief. After all the damage, after all the fear, this was the offer? No demand for territory, no punishment, no revenge. But then, the ambassador leaned forward, and his voice turned colder. "Reject this offer, and we will consider it your final mistake. We don't want war. But we don't lose wars either. We never have. You may have more ships. You may have more systems, but we have one thing you don't. We don't stop. The silence that followed was more terrifying than any explosion. Everyone present understood the weight behind those last three words. Humans didn't bluff. When they said something, they meant it. And when they promised peace, they offered a chance to walk away from destruction. But if you refused, you signed your own end. One by one, the leaders stood and nodded. Some did it quickly, others hesitated, but all of them understood that survival meant accepting the offer. The ambassador stood up, gave a small, respectful nod, and walked out. There was no celebration, no threats, no cheers, just quiet acceptance. But as the human ship drifted away into the darkness, every leader knew something had changed forever. Humans had not only revealed their power, they had offered mercy. And the galaxy had one chance to accept it. If peace held, they might live to see a new age of understanding. But if even one species broke the deal, it wouldn't just start a war, it would end everything. Because now they knew humans were not just strong, not just dangerous, but willing to give peace before vengeance. And that made them more powerful than anyone had ever imagined. The offer had been given. The future would now be decided by how the galaxy answered it, not with words, but with actions. And the humans would be watching.